As of now, I have officially ranked every Season 2 SpongeBob episode from worst to best, and this is what I came up with. This is still my opinion. I'll probably put the link to the first season ranking in the description if I remember. Anyway, enjoy. Coming in last place is I'm with Stupid. This shouldn't surprise anyone, I hope. I don't understand how anyone can like this episode. It's supposed to be funny, I think, but it fails miserably. I don't think I Was a Teenage Gary was unwatchable. I just thought it was bad compared to other SpongeBob episodes. This, on the other hand, is unwatchable. It's impossible to not feel bad for SpongeBob here. He doesn't deserve any of this. Patrick is just being a total asshole, even though SpongeBob was just trying to help him. All the jokes are terrible. They usually consist of Patrick and his parents laughing at SpongeBob. In fact, that's the whole episode. This is miles worse than number 38. This is still one of my least favorite SpongeBob episodes. In fact, it might be my least favorite in general. In 38th place, I have Big Pink Loser. Okay, one good joke is enough to make a good episode, even if the jar joke is great. But outside of that one joke, this is a boring, stupid, and unfunny episode. I actually feel bad for SpongeBob here. Patrick is way more annoying than I thought he was in this one, and in this episode particularly, he really gets on my nerves. This episode is noticeably better than I'm with Stupid, but it's still bad, like really bad. Season 2 is one of my favorite seasons, but these two ones are just really, really bad. 37th belongs to Jellyfish Hunter. I love Mr. Krabs, but sometimes they take his greediness a bit too far, and this episode is the perfect example for that. Mr. Krabs is not funny in this episode, like at all. I don't know if they wanted him to be funny though. But if they did, they really failed. He just comes off as a jerk and just kind of comes off as a total psychopath maniac. Something Smells, similar to Suds, is overall just uncomfortable. It has a couple good scenes, but it just isn't fun to watch. It makes me feel uncomfortable and out of place every time I watch this episode. I can't be the only one who feels this, right? I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I just do not enjoy watching this one. In 35th place, I have Dumped. I don't know if Gary is heartless or he's just plain stupid, but damn, he's annoying in this episode. I just realized that most of the worst episodes consist of SpongeBob being bullied. Maybe I don't like those kind of episodes, and that's why these ones are so low. I don't know why this episode is just really bad. In 34th place, I have Krusty Love. Looking back, a lot of Season 2 episodes have a really annoying Mr. Krabs. Jellyfish Hunter and Krusty Love suffer from this the most, though. In this episode, he's not a jerk, he's just really annoying. I also really hate Mrs. Puff for some reason in almost every episode she's in. Yeah, this episode is not exactly my cup of tea. In 3rd place, I have a really harmless episode, Gary Takes a Bath. Yes, this episode is harmless, but that doesn't change the fact that it's hella boring. I don't like SpongeBob short episodes for some reason, and this one is no exception. This episode is a definition of forgettable. There's not even that much good jokes in it. It just doesn't do anything insulting, so I guess I can't put it at last place. My 32nd place also falls under the category of SpongeBob being bullied, which is I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. This episode isn't lower because the people who bully SpongeBob actually get punished for it. Also, this episode is consistently funny, but I still hate this episode anyway. In 31st place, I have Grandma's Kisses. Wow, another bully SpongeBob episode for no logical reason. I think you already know this, but I don't like these episodes. Season 2 was often considered the best SpongeBob season, but some of these episodes really suck. By this time in the Season 1 ranking, we were already in the good episodes, but here we are still at the bad ones. Why are these people laughing at SpongeBob? I don't understand. What did he do? Please tell me what SpongeBob even did in this episode. In 30th place, I have Bossy Boots. I actually do not hate this episode. It's definitely not good. It's not funny, and it's definitely not emotional. It's just not terrible like the other ones. Pearl is one of my least favorite characters, and this episode puts everything I hate about her into the same episode. But everything that doesn't consist of Pearl being annoying is actually fine in this one. Overall, this is a massive improvement from number 31. In 29th place, I have Patty Hype. Please stop bullying Spongebob. It's so hard to watch. There's no reason to laugh at this, you jerks. The only reason this isn't lower is because this episode has some creativity, but this episode is far from good. It's boring, really stupid, and once again has people bullying Spongebob for no logical reason. Wow, my 28th place is 5 times better than my 29th. Wormy is a pretty good episode. It's funny, wholesome, and has some legitimately good moments. This also has a lot of creativity. Good job, Season 2, you're improving. And there's no SpongeBob bullying in this one either. Good job. But those live action shots, they kind of creep me out, so can you stop doing that? Pressure comes in at 27th. This episode is about the same quality as Wormy. Its comedy is better though, and it has a lot more creativity. So I guess it is better than Wormy now that I think about it. But yeah, Pressure is a solid episode. I like the competition SpongeBob and Sandy have. And I think it has a lot of creativity, like when they go to the shore. I don't have a lot to say, this episode is just good. In 26th place, I have Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm. Overall, I don't have a lot to say about this episode. It has good jokes, it's creative enough, and it has a decent amount of heart. It's not remarkable, it's just a good episode. But this is when things start to get hard. A lot of these last few episodes are about the same in quality, so I really just have to put my personal preference to decide, and it's not really easy to do. But yeah, almost all of the 20s in this list are equally as good. Artist Unknown comes in at 25th place. This episode relies completely on its comedy, and is damn funny so it works. All the jokes land in this one, especially the sculpture joke. But the other ones are pretty good too. This episode is very good. Honestly, this would probably be in the top 15 in Season 1, so I can now officially confirm that Season 2 is better than Season 1. Squirrel Jokes is somehow funny even though all of the jokes are squirrel puns. It always baffles me how this show can make everything funny. Also, SpongeBob gets a little arrogant in this episode, and he kinda comes off as a jerk. It was nice seeing him improve, unlike all the losers who bullied SpongeBob. But yeah, this is a great episode. It's really funny, and it has an interesting premise, and it somehow makes it work. I've noticed over the past couple of years that a lot of the episodes of SpongeBob that are good have songs in them. Even if this is one of the worst of those episodes, Your Shoes Untied is still a pretty good episode. SpongeBob is likable and Gary gets his rare fleshing out, and the song is pretty good. Not the best, but it's still a pretty solid song. Overall, this episode is pretty solid. It has very good jokes, and it has a pretty interesting message to tie your shoe or something. I don't even know. This episode is really good. Some of these episodes are hard to explain what makes them so good, and No Free Rides is no exception. These last few episodes don't have something that makes them good outside of the comedy and character interactions. This is why Season 2 is so special. It has so many episodes that are just good. Some of them don't stick out, but if you watch them, you will have a good time. And this episode is the perfect example of that. It's not emotionally driven, and doesn't have like this one hilarious joke to be remembered forever. It's just good. In 21st place, I have Pre-Hibernation Wake. This episode is really creative. The locations that SpongeBob and Sandy go to are great. The park location is my personal favorite. I think it's a clever way to portray how Sandy looks at things. I mentioned in my other video that I really like Sandy, and part of that is because I think she has great chemistry with SpongeBob. And this whole episode is about just that. There's tons of memorable jokes in this one, and even the less memorable ones are still funny and always make me chuckle. I think this episode is way better than No Free Rides. Even though they're only one apart, I think they're drastically different in quality. So keep that in mind as we move into number 20. Starting my top 20 is Imitation Crabs. I just love that Mr. Krabs knows less about his own restaurant than Plankton does. I don't know why, I just find that really funny for some reason. Mr. Krabs honestly is the best part about this episode. This is the Mr. Krabs I want. Funny but not overly irritating. Never go back to the jellyfish hunter Mr. Krabs. We all want this one. Well, actually, at least I want this one. Plankton and Mr. Krabs' rivalry is one of the more interesting ideas in the show, but early on there wasn't a lot of it. So this is a different episode from the other season 2 ones. It was still really good though and had a lot of good jokes. And I think the premise is overall just very interesting in general. Bubble Buddy is one of the more iconic episodes of SpongeBob. I kinda think it's overrated though. It has good jokes, but I don't think it has a reason to be so popular. In terms of introducing a new character for one episode, I think that Frankendoodle is better. I also think the ending of this episode is dumb. The other people in Bikini Bottom are total jerks, and I think that Bubble Buddy turning out to be alive is stupid. But this episode does have a lot of good jokes and a pretty interesting plot. So I'll give it that. It's a pretty good episode. I just don't think it's phenomenal like some other people. In 18th place, I have the Smoking Peanut. I like clams. In 17th place, I have the Secret Box. This episode is plain hilarious. So many jokes in this one work. SpongeBob and Patrick's chemistry is at its best in this one. All their interactions are perfect. The voice acting might be part of that, but I think their relationship is very well written in general, and this is one of the best it's ever been. In 16th place, I have Squidville. I love the premise of Squidville. I think it could have been executed better, but I still think that they did a really good job. I thought the sequence where Squidward slowly started losing his happiness after realizing that doing the same thing over and over again was great. And this episode is really funny, like hilarious. Squidward finding happiness is always a fun to watch for me as well. This is one of my personal favorite SpongeBob episodes, and it always has been. I like Squidville a lot more than the Secret Box, and I like the 15th spot, which you'll see in 1 second, way better than Squidville. All of these next couple of episodes are very good. Procrastination is one of the craziest episodes in the show, but I actually kinda love it. It's relatable and it presents a real life problem, and uses it for a hilarious cartoon episode. It's kind of impressive, honestly. I like that this episode really only focuses on SpongeBob. There's not really any other character other than Mrs. Puff, but even she's only there for like 1 minute. It gives us more explanation on who SpongeBob is, since he wasn't really fully established at this time. Overall, this is a wacky but very good episode. The early episodes that focus on Squidward changing character are really good, and Squid's Day Off is no exception. For some reason, Squidward is so well written in the first 3 seasons of the show. It doesn't feel unnatural whenever he changes character. I think that's because the writers of the old SpongeBob care so much about the characters, unlike now when they're all one-dimensional and annoying. But Squidward is not one-dimensional at all in the first 3 seasons, and this episode is the perfect example of that. In 13th place, I have Squid on Strike. This episode is one of the funniest of the season. Squidward and SpongeBob have perfect chemistry. In fact, everyone in the show has perfect chemistry in the first few seasons. They all have natural and perfect interactions, and this episode captures that perfectly between 2 of the main characters. And the side characters are hilarious, and their reactions to everything are great. I also just love the premise of this episode, just SpongeBob and Squidward working together over something. I don't know, it's just so interesting to me. Literally everything I said about Squid on Strike can be said about number 12, which is Graveyard Shift, so I don't really want to talk about this episode, I'm getting bored. In 11th place, just missing out in the top 10, I have Life of Crime. If this wasn't season 1, it would have been higher. But it's not, so it's not higher. The reason this isn't in the top 10 is because there's no heart. The comedy is phenomenal, it's downright hilarious, but there's no heart in it, so I don't really think I can put it any higher. Also, it's not like the most hysterical episode ever, it's just really funny. But SpongeBob and Patrick's interactions are great, and there's so many memorable jokes in this great episode. Now, let's get to my top 10. These are some of my favorite SpongeBob episodes ever. Kicking off the top 10 is Survival of the Idiots. This episode has some of the most creative ideas in a SpongeBob episode ever. The whole Dirty Dan thing with SpongeBob and Patrick is hilarious. Using Sandy's fur to stay warm is a clever way to use comedy as well. I wish we get more episodes like this, just the two main characters messing around and having fun. But sadly, we don't. In ninth place, I have Frankendoodle. This is perhaps the most iconic SpongeBob episode ever made. For a good reason. Its creativity and hilarious and clever jokes are outstanding. That line made no sense, I just realized that after reading that out loud, but I don't care. I bet you expected this classic episode to be higher, but too bad, this is my list. The only reason it isn't higher is because the doodle thingy is kinda annoying. I don't know, he's just really annoying and I don't like the voice they gave him. But other than that, this episode is great. In 8th place, I have Sailor Mouth. Okay, this might sound hypocritical because I said Life of Crime wasn't higher because it didn't have any heart. And Sailor Mouth doesn't have any heart either. But I think Sailor Mouth is just that funny. There's only one episode on this list that I think is consistently funnier than this one. But we're not there yet, so you have to wait. But yeah, I love everything about this episode. The censoring of the words, or maybe it's not censoring, maybe those are the actual words. I don't know, this episode is just so creative and I love it. In 7th place is Fry Cook Games. There's a lot of episodes that consist of SpongeBob and Patrick just having great chemistry and perfect interactions. And this is the episode that comes to mind immediately when I think of those ones. This episode has heart, but it's also hilarious. The screaming guy, the stupid tasks and challenges, the narrator, every joke slaps. This episode is extremely underrated and it's always been one of my go-tos whenever I just want to sit down and watch SpongeBob for some weird reason. 6th place belongs to Welcome to the Chum Bucket. This episode also falls under the category of song equals good. Whenever an episode has a song, you know they care more about the episode than normal. This is another example of the Mr. Krabs that I love. He's still greedy, but he cares about SpongeBob and realizes that he needs him if he wants to be successful and rich. And whenever he realizes it, a great episode is bound to happen. Sometimes you could really tell how much the writers care about the characters, and this is a perfect example. Also, every time SpongeBob and Plankton interact with each other, it's great. This whole episode is great, and this is one of my favorite episodes. I'm still not sure if I like Welcome to the Chum Bucket or Dying for Pie better, but today I chose Dying for Pie. Once again, this episode is about Squidward caring about SpongeBob and actually accepting him as a friend. And the brick scene is still one of my favorite moments. It's funny, but also shows how much Squidward cares for SpongeBob. The premise of this episode is just great in general. It allows for so much great and funny moments. And well, there is a lot of great and funny moments. But honestly, I think number 4 is like a lot better than this one. But I still do really like this one, but let's talk about number 4. In 4th place is the actually good Christmas episode, Christmas Who. I just like this episode because of how much heart it has. But honestly, I would be lying if I said I don't mostly like it for how funny it is. This season has 2 great special episodes. This one and one that I'll get to in a second. But let's talk about why this is so good. I think it's the tone and vibe you get watching it. It starts out all happy and upbeat, but then it slowly maneuvers into a sad and unfortunate tone. And then it ends with the emotionally driven and powerful ending. But none of them feel forced. They flow so smoothly and perfectly. Along the way, it has good jokes that will keep you engaged and perfect chemistry between the characters. That is what a perfect SpongeBob special episode is. Why do I like Shanghai better than Christmas Who? There's one reason. Creativity. There's the zipper that Squidward falls through. There's the perfume shop. The vegetarian joke. The whole premise is just wacky and full of obscurity. I mentioned in my Season 1 ranking that there was a boundary between too weird and hilarious. I Was a Teenage Gary is an example of crossing that boundary. It's a very thin line that Shanghai manages to avoid crossing, which makes it so hilarious without crossing the boundary. And oh my god, this episode is hilarious. It's not the funniest of the season, but it's definitely top 3. The Flying Dutchman is also a pretty good character. He's funny, but also clever and well written. Overall, this episode is amazing. Just missing out on the number 1 spot is Mermaid Man in Barnacle Boy 3. Man Ray is honestly my favorite character in all of SpongeBob. My favorite main character is probably Squidward or Mr. Krabs, but Man Ray is my favorite character in general. He is hilarious. His voice acting is literally better than any Disney or Pixar voice acting you'll ever see. It is so good and everything he says is hilarious. The only voice acting I think I can compare is Shrek's in the original one.
What are you doing in my swamp?
But everything Man Ray says is full of personality, and the voice actor literally puts his heart and soul into it. I don't even care if the plot, the premise, or anything sucks in this episode. Man Ray is the best character ever. I am literally obsessed with him. He might be my favorite character in any piece of fiction, and he's only been in one good episode. This is literally the only episode I watch when I'm bored. Yeah, I watch sometimes whatever number 1 is, or sometimes Shanghai, or whatever. But whenever I'm bored, I sit down and watch this episode. I don't know how many times, but a lot of times. I said there was one episode consistently funnier than Sailor Mouth, and this is it. Number 1 is Band Geeks. I mean, what did you expect to be number 1? This is everyone's number 1 SpongeBob episode. Honestly, it's not my favorite, but it's the best. My favorite is the Season 3 episode, so you have to wait and see what that is. Anyway, what makes Band Geeks so good? I have 3 main reasons. The first one is the comedy. Every joke is great and unique. There's no similar jokes in other episodes. This one has its own type of humor. It's more clever and has actually well-written jokes and doesn't rely on just the voice acting. Number 2, character interactions. The band all have perfect chemistry and perfect interactions. And Squidward has great interactions with the band as well. Him and Squilliam also have some great moments as well. All the characters have great chemistry. And the final reason, the emotionally driven ending. If you didn't have a smile on your face or feel happy for Squidward at the end, then you're weird. That's the only conclusion I can come to. All the characters do their best to give Squidward a happy and memorable moment, and they end up succeeding. Seeing Squidward succeed and feel actual happiness is great, and we feel like we were there with him. And Sweet Victory is an additional 10 points, so it makes this epic and amazing too. Anyway, yeah, Band Geeks is number 1, to nobody's surprise. Only days after Season 1 ranking, I ended up making a Season 2 ranking. And this is it. Hope you like it. And I'll make a Season 3 ranking whenever I want to.